So thank y'all all again for coming to experience this powerful experience with us face to face. I have the honor of introducing the influencer of the year, Miss Tashara.
You all that were with us virtually yesterday met Miss Tashara. That if you're new to us, you all know her, and she is just so amazing in every way. So thank you, Miss Tashara, for all that you do with us and for us. I had no idea that Allure was going to say that. So
Influencer of the year.
we see each other. I appreciate that. So we are going to call the next panel up, and as they are making their way up and getting mic'd up, a couple things that I wanted to say. Number one, we're going to have a TikTok challenge a little bit later on. Don't worry. We have our young people here to help guide us through the process, okay? Does everyone know what TikTok is? I don't want to make any assumptions because I know it's a cross-generational audience, okay? So if you don't know what TikTok is, this is what I like to say. That y'all remember hand games like Miss Mary Mac and Gigolo and Down Down Baby, right? So TikTok is that, basically, okay? The TikTok is that. So let's get started, I think, with this section of our program. We're throwing it way back. Now, if you were 30 plus, 35 plus, you probably remember this. And y'all remember Gigolo? I'm not hearing. Do y'all remember Gigolo? All right, so if I say, you just join along with me. If I say jig, allo, jig, allo, jig, allo, jig, allo, hey Summit, hey Summit, are you ready to gigolo? Yeah, okay. Now, we got our hands up high, our feet down low, and okay, they too hype. They're showing us up already. I'm giving y'all a chance to show them what we got. We're going to do this one more time. I need President Judge Clark to come make your way up here, please. Tiffany Sizemore, please make your way up here, please. And also the young people who will be introducing them. And as they come up, we're going to try this one more time. One more time for the 99 and the 2000, okay? So, it's like this. Jig, allo, jig, allo, jig, allo, jig, allo. Hey, Summit. Yeah. Hey, Summit. Yeah. Are you ready? Yeah. To gigolo? We got our hands up high, our feet down low, and this the way we gigolo. Jig, allo, jig, allo, jig. Okay. I think we might be ready. We might be ready. I'll make sure we have some Bengay, BioFreeze, and Tiger Balm in the back when the TikTok challenge starts for those of us who are at a big age. Okay. Ladies, please have a seat, and we'll have your young people to come and to join you for the interview in just one moment. But as we get started, what I'm going to do is introduce these two amazing black women judges. And so first we have Judge Tiffany Sizemore, who was elected to the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas in November 2021. She is assigned to the Family Division and handles primarily juvenile delinquency and dependency matters. Prior to joining the court, Judge Sizemore was an associate professor of clinical legal studies at Duquesne University School of Law. She joined the faculty of Duquesne Law School in August 2015. She developed and directed the Youth Advocacy Clinic. In addition to her extensive trial experience in both criminal and juvenile delinquency court, Judge Sizemore sits at many policy and stakeholder tables related to these issues. For example, she was accepted into Georgetown University Center for Juvenile Justice Reform Multi-System Integration Certificate Program as part of a team from Allegheny County that developed a capstone project. She was a member of the Commonwealth's Juvenile Court Procedural Rules Committee and also previously served as the board chair for the Alliance for Police Accountability in 2016. Prior to moving back home to Allegheny County, Judge Sizemore was a trial attorney for 8 years at the Public Defender Service for the District of Columbia, which I have to say is a tremendous accomplishment because many people didn't get a chance to work there, me included. They was like, no, you can't. We're not going to hire you, but they brought you, which is amazing. And we have President Judge Kim Clark. who currently serves as president judge of the 5th Judicial District of Pennsylvania, and she is the first African American to serve as president judge in Allegheny County. She earned her JD from Duquesne University School of Law in 1983. I don't know how, because I think she's 21. But following law school, she served as an assistant district attorney and later deputy district attorney in Allegheny County for 16 years. In 1999, Governor Tom Ridge appointed Clark to the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. She has said that understanding that many people who enter the family division are traumatized is one of the biggest needs. She's worked to develop a trauma-informed courthouse, which has served as a model for other courts in Pennsylvania and also nationwide. She was appointed to her current role in 2018 and now oversees all divisions of the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas, including family, orphans, criminal, and civil. So these are our two panelists. Please give them a round of applause. And they will be interviewed by our Begala Emerging Leaders.
Our first question for the day is, what do you take into consideration when separating siblings? There we go.
So often on the dependency side, I don't know if this is working, but often on the dependency side, I try very hard, and I think the law favors obviously not separating siblings, but at times there's no, you may have family members who are willing. So let me back up a little bit. Preference is for kids to be with their family members if they can't be with their parents, right? And then sometimes you may have family members who are willing to take one child but not both kids or all the kids. And so for me personally, I would rather see kids with family first. So if I have multiple family members that are willing to take kids, then I think it's more likely that the siblings will still see each other, still be able to interact in a natural way. Then, obviously, if we have to go to stranger foster care or worst case scenario, congregate care, like a group home or something like that, then obviously we take into account who will take what child. I mean, some of this is out of our control. So if a foster family or a biological family member is unwilling to take more than one sibling, then there's not much that we can do. I can't force someone. I may be able to ask them nicely. Sometimes if I think that maybe CYF has not asked persuasively enough, I may ask the person to come to court or ask them to be on the phone so that I can ask myself, because it's my strong preference. I think that when siblings are together, they tend to do better. And they tend to have just that more support just being with the other person, and there's more protection there. But we'll see what Judge Clark.
So, yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it's on. So, obviously, I really try hard not to separate siblings. I really believe that in many cases, the sibling bond is strongest because they've been through whatever has happened to cause kids to come into care. They've been through it together. And for siblings sort of in different age groups, I have the trauma that it causes to both the older and the younger siblings when it separates is just devastating. Older kids are worried about, where are my siblings? Are they all right? Because they've been used to caring for them. In my family, I grew up in a family where it's a very blended family, but my mother in her early years as a parent moved around a lot, and my two of my sisters were separated, and even well into her 60s, it had an effect on my sister. So I know how the trauma of I have witnessed it in my own family, the trauma of separating siblings. That being said, I think I'm going to give kudos and shout outs to CYF, who there's just been so much change in the 25 years that I've been on the bench in terms of us understanding the trauma involved with removal and separation of siblings and the need to really increase kinship care, non-stranger care in big numbers. So our default is obviously to place children with people that are not strangers, people they know, either relatives or other people. Sometimes, unfortunately, when you have a large sibling group, people just can't do it. So my next goal is to try to get siblings placed close together, as many people that can take siblings. But I've had caseworkers and casework supervisors who have done an excellent job at gently persuading family members and others to take whole sibling groups, making them understand the need to keep these children together. And so I think with sort of calling everybody together at the table and talking about this need, people will understand why we need to keep siblings together. There are some cases where we can't keep siblings together. So we do have had cases of sexual abuse among siblings. And right until the abuser gets treatment, it's not safe to keep siblings together. So it doesn't mean that they can't have any contact, but they cannot live together in the same environment. Maybe one sibling has some specialized treatment needs and needs intensive mental health services in a residential setting, but the goal is once they are discharged from their mental health services, their treatment, their inpatient treatment, to put those siblings back together. So those are the things I kind of look at, like, why can't we put them together? The default should be that we can, and to try to work with the families who are involved, who are willing to be caregivers, or the foster care agencies to find someone who will take sibling groups. We've had relatives do it. We have parents that are married and divorced, and they manage to co-parent kids, go back and forth. So sometimes we can look at relatives who can co-parent. Maybe grandmother says, I can't keep them 7 days a week because I work, but maybe the maternal aunt and uncle will say, but we can keep them on those days, and at least the siblings can be kept together. I've learned over the years, and it takes time. I'm still learning, believe it or not, I'm still learning my job after 25 years, because you learn more and more from the children and families that are in front of you. From listening to your spoken word this morning, I'm still evolving. I'm still a work in progress, and I'm on my way towards retirement, so I don't think I'm ever going to be where I should be, because we should always be looking to get better and better and to change. And I've seen that over the 25 years. We've done a lot better, but we're not where we should be, and so we still have a lot of work to do.
Okay, I have an easier question for you. What made you become a judge or want to become a judge?
So that's kind of a long story. I can't say that I always wanted to be a judge. I'm not sure I even always wanted to be a lawyer, but when I made that decision to be a lawyer, and then I was a prosecutor in the district attorney's office, a couple of things for me that made me feel like I had to move on. And so I had friends convince me it's time for you to go. I had sort of hit that glass ceiling when we talk about equity, in terms of women in the profession and black women in the profession. I mean, I did very well in the DA's office, but it became clear to me one day that I wasn't going to go any farther. Just no matter how many cases I successfully prosecuted, no matter how many victims felt like they got justice in court. And so I will say, just kind of as an aside, I feel like there are equity issues with black victims. We have black victims, and I don't feel like they always get the same time and attention that victims who are not black get, especially black females, victims of sexual abuse. They don't, and I prosecuted a lot of those cases, and I saw it. So it was kind of the natural thing. A friend of mine who was a former colleague in the district attorney's office said, well, Kim, there's 6 openings coming up on the Court of Common Pleas, and you should consider running because the more openings there are, the better chance you have. And I didn't know that her family was political, but they were. And she pledged her family to me. She said, my family will help you. They are not African American. My family will help you, and we will help you raise money. We will help you in the election. So I felt like, yeah, this is something that I wanted to do. So it was sort of a process for me. So that's kind of how I decided. It was like, where am I in my career as a black woman, and where am I going from here?
I was not. I was not really thinking about becoming a judge. I was.
But we're so glad you did.
I was a litigator for 17 years. I was happy doing that work. I represented kids for this whole second half of my career, and I really like and love my clients. And I wasn't terribly eager to leave them. And I had the clinic, which I started, and I was like a baby. I don't have kids, right? So the clinic is like one of my babies. And so some people approached me and asked me about running, and similar to what Judge Clark just said, there was going to be a lot of openings, and they were interested in me running on a diverse slate of candidates, and sort of at the final window to get in, I thought about it over Valentine's Day weekend, actually, and then decided to get into the race. And I love it. I do love the work, but it was, I also really like representing individuals, and I really like the advocacy piece. And so it's not true that you can't be an advocate anymore as a judge. You just advocate in different ways for the siblings to be together, right? For kids to be returned home at the earliest time that they can that's safe for them, for data-driven solutions to the problems that we face in our cases. And so ultimately what tipped the balance for me is that I thought that we needed more decision makers on the court who reflected the communities that the court served. And I thought that I would be good at that work. And so that's what sort of tipped the scales for me.
What would you say, since you've been a judge, was your biggest hardship that you had to overcome?
So half of my docket basically is dependency work, and I never did that work before I became a judge. Dependency, child welfare, so all of the CYF stuff. I really didn't do that as a lawyer. I did criminal defense, I did juvenile delinquency, and I did special education and school discipline. But I really didn't do dependency work. So it's been a huge learning curve. So I had to learn this whole area of law in a way that I didn't have to know. And then I think the other thing is just it's different. It's more heavy in some ways. And I've done really, really serious trial work, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's different when you're advocating for your client. It's clear your client is driving the work. You're advocating for what your client wants versus being the person making the decision in a case and hoping. I mean, all you can do is hope that you've made the right decision, because there's lots of decisions that we make every day that don't have clear answers. And so you're just hoping that you're doing the thing that is going to get the best outcome for kids and for families.
So my answer is very similar to Judge Sizemore's. So when I came to the bench, I had never worked as a lawyer in juvenile court, not in delinquency or dependency. So it again was a learning curve just in that type of law. The other thing is that at the time I came to the bench, juvenile court was a very different place than it is now. If people think that there are a lot of issues in juvenile court now, they should have been there in 1999 when we were in the health department building in Oakland, where cases, I made the third judge. I was appointed while I was running. So there were two judges in juvenile court. I made the third judge. We were on the bench at least till 8 o'clock every night. We were on the bench every day. And because I was appointed, I had no training as a judge. So that was what they thought, I think, of juvenile court. It was in Oakland, out of sight, out of mind. They didn't care that people were coming at 8:30 in the morning and were still sitting in that waiting room waiting for their cases to be heard until at 8 and 9 o'clock at night. I remember then we had paper files, and so I was looking at one of the case files, and I was looking at the last court order, which you look at, and it said status quo. And I said to my court clerk, I said, Bridget, what does that mean, status quo? She said, well, Judge, whatever was ordered at the last hearing, everything's in place. So I kept going through orders, and there might have been 6 orders that all said status quo. So nobody was, because there were so many cases, nobody was really able to review all those cases. So at the end of the day, a lot of the orders would be status quo. I had people tell me, oh, when I first got to the bench, oh, don't worry about that. After you get, some experience under your belt, they'll move you to a real court. Like, these children and families who had real issues were not real people. So one of my challenges was just learning the work and getting through the immense work. I tell people now, like on our dependency cases, our cases are assigned by regional office, and there are usually 2 judges that have a regional office. When I first started, I had all of the Mon Valley regional office and half of the Southern regional office. It's just my dependency caseload. I remember the first day that I was supposed to hear termination of parental rights hearings. I came out, there were all these files, and I said to my clerk, I said, what are these? She said, well, this is your day for termination of parental rights. I had a panic attack. I was a brand new judge. I knew nothing. I said, you mean they want me to terminate somebody's parental rights? She said, well, that's the idea, Judge. I said, but I'm not competent to do that. I'm not qualified to do that. Fortunately, they were just what we call the show-up hearings, where you're just preserving service, and I really did not have to make any of those decisions. But I was really almost in full-blown panic attack because I felt like this is not right. So that was a big hurdle. And then the other one is, as a judge, like Tiffany said, like when you're a lawyer, you advocate for a certain position, but you don't have to decide whether somebody's guilty or not guilty. You don't have to make a decision to remove somebody's children or terminate somebody's parental rights. You don't have to decide whether kids get to go home, stay home, or where they're going to be placed. But there's no juries. You have to make those decisions all by yourself. And I really wish sometimes I had 11 other people that I could talk it through to help me make this decision, because the decisions are heavy. You can do a lot of damage if you make the wrong decision. And so our decisions are as good as the information that we have, the credible information that we have. And sometimes I feel like we just don't know enough. I need to know something else. I need to know more. And it's not surprising. People that are traumatized aren't going to come into the court and tell Judge Clark all their stories, all their business that first day. But yet and still, there's rules that say, in 10 days, I have to do this. In 30 days, I have to do that. In 3 months, I have to do this. In 90 days, I have to do that. So regardless of whether I have all that information, I have to make that decision. So those are my hurdles.
My next question is, what would you say pushes you and drives you every day to keep going?
I want to get it right. I mean, I want to get it right for young people. I want to get it right for parents and families. I care deeply about the city. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, and I have, I have love for the work and for this system and for this city. And so I want to get it right. I'm also like just the type of person who wants to get it right. So that's also something that's sort of inherent to my personality. But, I have seen, as I'm sure Judge Clark did in her years of practice, what happens when people get it wrong. So I would say, obviously, like when I think about what is my docket, who's coming up for the week, and what are the decisions that have to be made, that's what drives me. I mean, I don't think people should get involved in this work on any part as a judge, defender, prosecutor, or anything else, unless they care deeply about these issues. Because as a parent advocate, as a child advocate, People shouldn't take these jobs, and people shouldn't be hired for these jobs unless they care about these issues, because that's how things get deeply, systemically wrong and entrenched. And so if you feel burnt out, if you feel tired, if you feel like you need a break, then move on. I encourage people to do that professionally because it's not easy work. And so, yeah, so that's a long way of saying that I care, and that's what gets me up in the morning.
So I think you have to have sort of a passion for this work. I think working in juvenile and family court is not for everybody. There are some people that are not suited to the work, and you do want to get it right. You want to do the best job you can do. But I really deeply care about all of the people that come into my courtroom that I see, the children and the families. And I recognize how the odds are stacked against them, that whole equity piece. The playing field is not level. And the biggest common denominator of the people that I see in my courtroom, especially in dependency court, is poverty. And not that people that have money and means don't have the same issues. They do. But it's a lot easier to navigate systems and to get through things when you have money, when you're not worried about how do I keep the lights on, how do I keep a roof over my family's head, how do I buy food, how do I keep my children fed, how do I, all of those things. So it's just recognizing, I think, that everybody that comes before me is a human being, and what can I do best for the human beings, the citizens of Allegheny County that are in my courtroom. So they keep me driving. I think we always hang our hats and attach ourselves to the success stories because we know that if we do it right, we can help. We know if we do it wrong, we can do a lot of damage. Sometimes I think we're too much involved and we need to just sort of butt out of people's lives. And so how do we have that balance of when is enough when is the time to go away? I know as a kid, I'm the sort of like the original Home Alone kid because that's what had to happen in my family for us to survive. And I might have been maybe in my 40s, and my mother said to me one day, she said, I don't know what would have happened if you had issues and like you set fires and did things, because I was by myself as a toddler a lot of the time. And I laughed. I said, well, you'd be in jail and I'd be in foster care. But I said that jokingly, but I know that my life was not perfect, but if somebody had taken me from my family, I would have, first of all, I wouldn't be the same person I am now, but I would have been thoroughly traumatized. My mother, my father, my siblings, we didn't have a perfect life. And so I think I've sort of evolved to saying we're not trying to create perfect people out here because nobody's perfect, but we just need to, as the young women said this morning, we need to listen to what they've told us. We need to listen to them. We need to listen to these parents, even though you might have a mom or a dad that has a serious addiction issue. They can really sometimes tell you what's best for their family because that's their family, and I need to listen to that. So they keep me motivated. They keep me going every day.
Okay, now we're going to shift this to the audience. Does anybody have a question they would like to ask the judges? I'm coming.
Thank you, and thank you to all of our young ladies. This is actually not a question. It's actually for Judge Clark. I didn't recognize you earlier, but I just wanted to take this time to I was going to tell you personally, but thank you. You probably won't even remember. About maybe 15 years ago, there was a situation where my niece ended up being placed in my home because of whatever. You worked so hard with my brother for reunification. You did not give up on him. You would not take away his rights. You saw the best in him, and I just actually wanted to thank you because when she was returned to him, you cared so much that you put in the order that if he fell back on hard times or anything else happened, and like that my niece was taken again, that she was to be returned to me, and to me that was a plan you thought ahead in the future to protect her so that she wouldn't be with Ken. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, you're most welcome. Thank you. We all need words of encouragement.
Okay, the young people would put me to work this morning. They didn't think I ran around enough. So we have a question in the back, so I'm moving over this way. I want to say as I'm walking, thank you to Judge Clark and Judge Sizemore for being with us today. We appreciate you.
Hi. So what do you think, like, for people in high school, like, what do you think the best thing is to do now to prepare ourselves for, like, if we want to work in the same field when we're older?
We couldn't hear that.
So,
Oh, I got it. What do you think the best thing is to do now to prepare ourselves for if we want to work in the same field or like same, I guess, profession when we're older, like while we're in high school?
what advice do you have to aspiring judges?
So I would say stay focused academically. If you are like me, I had to leave the city for college because I felt like, if I stayed here, I would have been too distracted. I felt like there was probably some danger to me in the city, and so I needed to remove myself from it. So it's okay to leave. You can always come home. I am proof. I left for 17 years, went, did things, lived other places, went to school other places, and ultimately ended up back at home. You can always come home. And I would say follow your heart and don't take advice from people to tell you to try other things if you know for sure that this is what you want to do. I went to law school because I wanted to become a public defender. I was very intentional about that. It's the reason I went to law school. And I got very lucky in my first year criminal law class that I had a really amazing professor who sort of guided me, started me down the path when I told her what I wanted to do. But there were people along the way who told me, well, if you want to become a public defender, you really have to be a prosecutor. And there were people who told me if you should take this class in law school and that class in law school that had nothing to do with criminal law. And I ignored them. And I was hired by the best public defender's office in the country, and I thrived there. And that's because I built my career the way I wanted to build it. So stay focused academically, and if you feel that this is your work, this is your passion, then follow it. You don't have to become a prosecutor to become a public defender. You don't have to go try everything in the world to make sure this is what you really want to do. If that's what you want to do, then do it. And don't let anybody push you off your square. It is easier said than done. But, in the end, those people are going to be there when you're done with college, when you're done with law school. They're still going to be in your life if they care about you. They're still going to be around. They're still going to be your friends. I left for 17 years. I'm still friends with people I grew up with, right in the neighborhood I grew up with. So stay focused. Stay focused.
That focus part is a big thing, and it also takes some planning because to become a judge requires you to be a lawyer first. So that means you have to plan on where you're going to go to college and how you're going to pay for it, where you're going to go to law school and how you're going to pay for it. You have to study for the bar exam and pass that, and then you have to work as a lawyer. And then in Pennsylvania, judges are elected, so you have to figure out how do I have a campaign committee, and who's going to help me with that. But I would say for me, I think one of the best decisions I ever made in my life that I think has a lot to do with why I'm here is I made a decision to go to undergrad at an HBCU, an historically black university. And that was not the original plan. I was going to University of Pennsylvania. I was ready. I had my room in the dorm. I had been there. And my mother had a cousin who was on the faculty at Tennessee State and said, oh, Margaret, Kim should come down and look at TSU. I had never seen so many people that looked like me in important positions. Nashville, Tennessee has 3 HBCUs right in that city: Fisk University, Tennessee State, and Meharry Medical College. So I feel like what that said to me is, yes, you can be anything you want to be. Not that I never felt like I couldn't. My parents certainly were encouraging, but I grew up in Wilkinsburg. I went to Wilkinsburg High School. We had a couple of black teachers, but not too many. I had just never seen that. I was awestruck. It was such an inspiration for me. So I would encourage every African American, male or female, who's considering to go to college, at least consider an HBCU. It's a lot cheaper, so I didn't have to borrow any money to go to undergrad. So when I got ready to go to law school, I didn't have that debt from college that hanging over my back. I did have to borrow money to go to law school, but I didn't have such enormous debt. And so it kind of set the future for me. So it really takes some planning about what you want to do. The other thing is, find somebody who does what you want to do and sort of attach yourself to them. I'm always open to people coming and visiting me, so you can always do that. Dr. Kathy knows how to get in touch with me, so she'll share my information. I'm sure Judge Sizemore would do the same, so maybe you might want to shadow us or just sit and have more in-depth conversation about that to determine how we got where we are and whether you want to actually do this. You always are going to need mentors in your life. And so the last thing I would just say is, while you want to have mentors that look like you, do not just limit yourself to mentors that look like you. There are people that don't look like you that will mentor you, that can help you. And if you turn that down, if you refuse that help, you're really missing something. I know for a fact that some of the things that I have achieved would not have happened if black men and white women and white men had not mentored me along with black females. So mentors come in all sizes, shapes, colors, age groups. You need mentors. You do need mentors to look like you, but there are a whole lot of other people out here that are wonderful and will help you. We all need help. I'm 66 years old, and I still need help every day. And so there's no shame in asking for help. So when you need help, pick up the phone and call somebody. Ask for help. There are people out here that will help you.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, I see we have another question. And while I'm walking, Judge Clark and Judge Sizemore, I'd just like for you to share your self-care plan with us. How do you manage to do it all?
My self-care plan? So, well, I have a sort of, in the morning, I call it a ritual. And I think I did that Healing Rivers thing, and when I said that, she said, oh, I'm glad you call it a ritual, because it is sort of, I get up early because I do not like the mad dash in the morning. I have to have time to reflect. I have to do I do like words with friends. I do Wordle. I like word games. I have to do enough of those in the morning to get me started. I have to have some coffee. I have to have some breakfast, and then I walk to work. I walked here today. So that's my kind of mind clearing. I do different things when I walk. Sometimes I talk to my sister on the phone. Sometimes I listen to music. Sometimes I listen to audiobooks. This morning I'm listening to, while I'm walking, to Viola Davis's memoir, and it's fabulous, and I would encourage anybody to read it. It is a good audiobook because she reads it, and she's such a fabulous actress. So I would encourage you, if you consider reading that, do it. I love to cook, and I love to feed. So that was the thing. I love to feed my family and cook, and so during COVID, that was stressful not to be able to do that. Last year, when I finally could have Thanksgiving, I went crazy. I had to have every side dish known to man because my family was coming after, not having them. So I do that. But over COVID, I did start writing poetry. And so that has been, never wrote poetry before. I didn't know I could write poetry, but I've started writing poetry. Some people might call it angry black woman poetry. I don't necessarily think it's all of that, but it's about some of the things that I was feeling, along, with, the, black men being killed, women's not hitting that glass ceiling, I wrote one for Black History Month called American History, about why our history is just American history and why isn't it. So I've been doing that, and that's been a great kind of stress reliever, and I continue to do that. I do a lot of reading. I read and listen to books, and so those are kind of my life balance things. And then my husband is my greatest sounding board, and so he's my best friend. He is on the Gwen's Girls board, so we have a lot of good times together. And interestingly enough, over the 2 years that I was home during COVID, we got along. We didn't have any issues, and it was really kind of nice to just be there in that space with him all day long. So that helped.
Here is a thing, right, to show you that we are far from perfect. I'm not good at self-care. I'm terrible at it. I don't have a lot of self-care routines, but I am a creature of habit. That's one thing about me for sure. So I do have a routine in the mornings, and so if that counts as self-care, then I do that. The things I try to do, the things that make me happy, which is spending time with my friends and family as much as I can. I also like to cook and for people, for my family, but I'm not. That's one thing I have felt at pretty profoundly over the years, and I'm not great at it, and I'm still looking for maybe something that is something that I can do more regularly, and it's not good because I have stress, and I carry my stress in my shoulders. Sometimes I do food for comfort. Like, these are things that I fail at a lot, and I think it's not unique to me. It's very common in the legal profession. So I think that is something that lawyers generally and judges have to get better at, which is having some sort of release. So I'm a little bit, but I could do a lot better.
I did do boxing for a while. That was stressful.
So I have a question for both judges. I know this was talked about a little bit, but I guess I'm more curious about it in depth. So in your careers as judges in the juvenile justice courts, I know you touched on wanting the best result possible for juvenile folks that are in your court and their families. As you both already probably know very well, those young people tend to be very marginalized and come from underprivileged backgrounds. And unfortunately, we live in a society where sometimes very privileged people don't have empathy for folks coming from those backgrounds. I guess my question is, have y'all ever received pushback from some of your peers for supporting those youth who come from those marginalized conditions? And in those circumstances, what did you do?
She's going to let me go first on that one. So yes, yes, I have received pushback. It's complicated. I try to make people understand that. It's very complicated to answer this. So, I feel that we as judges should really, we have to do some sort of self-reflection and reflection on the system, because we have to really determine what's working and what isn't. And so, as Judge Sizemore talked about making data-driven decisions, and I talked about listening to what people tell you when they come into court, and really thinking about it. But sometimes there's a lot of pushback because people want to keep doing the things the way they've always done them. If I hear one more person say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, if you look at the data, you know that it is broken. And so, and just recognizing how, in general, the United States over-incarcerates. There's everybody who collects data on criminal justice will tell you there's no data to the contrary that the United States over incarcerates. And as I said, I'm a work in progress. You know, I was a prosecutor, and I prosecuted very serious and violent crimes for the most of my career as a prosecutor. Homicides, rapes, child abuse, all kinds of physical abuse cases. People were either dead or really hurt, and those were the cases I prosecuted. There were real victims. And so there was no doubt that if somebody was convicted of that crime, incarceration was going to be the sentence, and it should be. I feel that most people don't belong in jails and prisons. There are people who do because they hurt people, because they are dangerous to somebody or to everybody. And so, unfortunately, some people do. But the rest of the people, the damage that we do to society is far greater with incarceration. And I've seen that, and I try to explain that to some of my colleagues. As a juvenile court judge, when I have a parent that's incarcerated, even incarceration sometimes for a weekend can be a life-altering situation for somebody that is poor, because maybe they have just gotten a new job, they're starting a new job, so they're incarcerated, they've lost that job. Maybe they have been sort of not really paying their rent to the fullest, but the landlord knows they got a job, so that he's not going to evict them. But when that landlord finds out they're in jail, they're out. Their kids go into foster care or kinship care. CYF comes and gets the kids. So their whole life has changed by even a small time of incarceration. But people don't want to necessarily change, and that's the hard thing, getting people to understand that as a society we have a responsibility. So some of the pushback that I get was, well, you know, I'm following the law with the case that's in my courtroom. I'm not responsible for how the cases got there. And I think we are responsible for how the cases get there. So some things that we're trying to do now in Allegheny County is to increase the use of diversion. Gwen's Girls is spearheading that effort on the juvenile justice side. Pathways to Recovery is spearheading that effort on the criminal justice side. We do have a responsibility. Who better than the judges, the people that are in the leadership roles, to call people together and convene and change this? So there is pushback, but I'm pushing forward. You know, I'm not going to let anybody, you know, you can either work with me or not, but the system is changing, people are changing, everybody, you know, people are, even police departments are jumping on that bandwagon. They're like, well, we want to divert cases too. We don't want to arrest everybody and put them in jail. People want change. And so if the court doesn't feel like that's what people want, judges are going to be left behind. But, you know, judges are changing too. We elected 10 new judges in this last cycle. Young people, a diverse group. So the ones like me, I'm going to retire. And so it'll be judges like Judge Sizemore and others who will lead this ship. And so I'm very optimistic about what's to come for the future in terms of justice, the justice system in Allegheny County, because we have people like Judge Sizemore and others who are going to just keep moving forward. So we're going to be moving ahead, and the rest of them, I guess, they'll just be left behind, and that's on them. Sad. They won't get to celebrate with us. So too bad.
So I'm new, so nobody really pushes back because they don't think I really even know anything. I probably don't know anything. So if they're talking about me, it's behind my back. I don't know. But I also don't talk a lot in meetings because I'm new. You know how it is at a new job, right? So, but through my career, I have, you know, obviously experience, even amongst defense attorneys, people who say, you know, why would you, you know, go that extra mile, or why would you do that extra thing? And again, it goes back to my point earlier, because I care, and if you don't care, you shouldn't be doing the work. You know, and I've not had a problem saying that to people's faces, even if it rubs them the wrong way. But, you know, when we talk about, well, you know, I do what's in my individual courtroom, I think that, or what cases come before me, or I act on what's in front of me, on a lot of the decisions that we make every day, there's a wide range of things that you can do, right? And that is where you really sort of get different outcomes in different courtrooms, because what I think might be in the best interest of a child or a family is not maybe what another judge believes would be in the best interest of a child or a family. And those are the places where, you know, your judgment as a human being, what is your life experience, what's your world experience, and what seems like would be the best interest. Are you somebody who just echoes whatever a system player says in your courtroom? Are you somebody who listens to, like Judge Clark, like our emerging leaders have said, listens to the children and the parents in front of you and takes everything into consideration? Everybody who comes in wants their way, right? Whether it's the family, the kid, the probation, CYF, everybody's like, I've got the plan, this is the plan, right? But most of the time, so far in my experience, the outcome that's the best is probably a little bit of everybody's plan. But I think sometimes when you are acting from a place of fear, or acting from a place of lack of knowledge, or acting from a place of even implicit bias, you just do what's safe. Well, probation said to do this, so let's just do this, right? Because if something bad happens, I did what probation told me to do, or I did what CYF told me to do. So if something bad happens, it's not on me. I can sleep at night. And I've gotten lots of great advice since I started, but a judge here in Allegheny County said to us repeatedly, you have to be able to sleep at night with your decisions. And my whole career leading up to this, nothing about that career would allow me to ignore the voices of kids and of families and be able to sleep well at night. And so I have to do what I think is best, and then hope that it works. And I, maybe as a new judge, I'm very maybe a little bit more like, keep my cases closer, bring them in for reviews more often, because I want to see if it's working, so we can tweak if it's not. And maybe sometimes that gets on people's nerves, but I think we have a very small window, especially when you're dealing with children, where you can really just screw things up and you can't take it back once the damage is done. And so if it seems like it's going wrong, then I think we have an obligation to try to fix it, and not just say, well, that's what somebody recommended, so that's what I'm doing.
Let's just add one thing. And one of our emerging leaders said this morning that we have to have those courageous conversations. And I think for many, I mean, that's been like a really sort of difficult thing for me when I want to have the courageous conversations. People think I'm being accusatory, like I'm accusing them of something. When we have these conversations about systemic racism and, disparate representation of people of color in juvenile justice, child welfare, and criminal justice, I try to explain to people, even though I'm a person of color, when I talk about systemic racism, it includes me, because I work in the system. And I have to look at myself. Everybody has implicit bias, regardless of race, color, gender identity, whatever. We all have it. But we have to recognize what that is. So we have to have that inner courageous conversation with ourselves and identify and then confront our own implicit bias and understand it can affect our decision making. But we also have to encourage others to recognize their own implicit bias too. And those are the things that I sometimes get pushback on, about just trying to yes, we have to do this. I'll tell you, some of the most valuable things that I've learned have come from the children and families that have appeared in front of me. I still remember one of the things I had a case. It was sort of like a parent-child conflict dependency thing, and the child was, not respectful, doing X, Y, and Z, and services were in, it wasn't working. And then the next time we came back for review, everything was working really well. And I said to the family, I said, well, tell me what changed. And the mother said, I'll tell you, Judge Clark, she said, I kept trying to change my daughter, and that wasn't working. So she said, I decided to change myself, my behavior.
Excellent.
And it worked. So I've decided, when I heard that, I'm like, yeah, I need to focus on me. What am I doing? So over years, I've started changing myself, because, I can't tell people, like I said, even though there may be issues and maybe kids do belong in foster care or kinship care, but that doesn't mean that that mother who has a substance abuse disorder can't tell me what's best for her children. And I should respect that and listen to that. But I had to change myself. I had to realize that I can't, I'm out here trying to change all these people, and I just need to change the way I do business, the way I operate. And maybe if I change myself, maybe people will be more receptive to whatever I'm ordering, more likely to comply with court orders. So that was I have never forgotten that statement that she said to me. I changed myself. And that the light bulb went off in my head. So if any of us, any judges, anybody, any lawyer, anybody, any official feels like the people that come in front of you can't teach you something, they're sadly mistaken. That's where you're going to learn. That's where you're going to make the change, by hearing what they have to tell you, hearing what they say to you. And so listen. That was the other message this morning from our emerging leaders. Listen to what our children, listen to what our families have to tell us.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Judge Clark. Be the change that we want to see in the world is what I heard you say. I think we have time for probably 2 more questions, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to the judges for closing remarks. Okay. One, real quick.
Yeah, I would say no question, just a statement. Hello, judges. I just wanted to say, Judge Clark, you know me on many, many levels. You met me when I was 15 years old.
I can't see you because of the lights. I was just saying to Judge Sizemore. So can you?
Amber Knight.
Oh, hi, Amber. How are you?
Finding yourself. You know me since I was 15 years old, through juvenile justice and my own issues, and even as an adult with my own child. And I just wanted to say thank you, because I heard you may be retiring and I may not get the opportunity.
Next year, yes, I will be.
So congratulations.
So, thank you.
Okay, so I have several questions, I guess, now. But we are down to, I'm going to take 2 more, and I'm going to actually let our emerging leaders go ahead. There's one in the back, and there's one in the front, Ms. Moore. And then we're going to go ahead. So go ahead, Lori. You can take it to Ms. Savannah.
No problem.
Good morning. Judge Clark, there are so many good things I could say to you. I do appreciate you for always being consistent. You also played a part in my household with my younger siblings. I was just curious on the question, how often do you feel that you may have given the wrong verdict? And when you did, how did that make you feel?
So it's complicated, because sometimes it's not about the actual decision, like whether children are dependent or not dependent. But I know that I can say this, and so this is very painful for me to acknowledge, but it was a very different juvenile court when I started. And so one of the things we had was a lot of kids that had been in care for a long time. A lot of reasons that kids came into care. I would not remove those children. I know that there are cases on which I terminated parental rights, sadly, that if I had a do-over, if I knew then what I knew now, and we were in the same place where we were now with kinship care and all of the wonderful things that CYF provides to kind of normalize kids that are in care or under supervision, there would have been clearly different outcomes. And I really regret that. I can't take it back. I thought at the time I was making the right decisions based on the information I had. But that's part of what I said, the information. I mean, part of it is the training for judges. We now have more training. There's, a whole new face in juvenile court, not just here in Allegheny County, but in Pennsylvania and nationally. Now judges want to be in juvenile court or in family division. That's their platform when they run for judge. And so we have judges that now were lawyers that worked in the system. Some of them sort of grew up in the system. In other words, they were caseworkers or probation officers and went to law school and practiced law, and now they're judges. And so they have history and they have experience. And I think that's part of the problem when you have what I think is the most important division, because just think about what we do in juvenile and family court. Even on the domestic relations side, that whole family division, it directly affects the lives of our children and families. But yet we traditionally have put the most inexperienced judges in there. We just throw them in there and like, here, do these cases, take these kids, terminate rights, decide custody, all those kinds of things. It's ludicrous. So we're getting better at that. So it's no wonder that when I look back at some of the decisions I made, that now I think they were the wrong decisions. At the time, I thought they were the right decisions based upon my experience, my training, the data we had, the practices that we engaged in. But you can't have a do-over in those situations. So we still have to keep moving forward, and we have to continue to do that self-examination of ourselves and of the systems that we're in to make sure that we are doing the right things, that we're doing the best things we can do for children and families. There's a hand back there.
Good morning. So I have a quick comment and then a question. So my comment is to Judge Clark. She truly does have awesome aura and respect in her courtroom and has always been that kind of judge. And I'm sure, Tiffany, you'll follow in those footsteps as her successor coming in. So my question is, as a black woman, and so for me, the hardest part of the job has always been advocating for my families and my people, for lack of better terminology, and the pushback and that feeling of how do you take what people are saying to you. It almost is like all you're doing is just trying to help your people. But it's not just your people, it's all people, but you do have to speak louder when it comes to advocating for our families and our children.
So first of all, there's nothing wrong with trying to help your people, I would say. I have Mon Valley. I would say disproportionately the children and families I have are children and families of color, but I think there's a slight majority in the families that I have. I have a lot of Caucasian families, not all of my, and I don't treat them any differently because a lot of the issues are the same. Poverty is the big issue. But I do feel like black women, including black judges, we get labeled as the angry black woman too a lot. I was doing a presentation on implicit bias, and I always like to update things, and I was looking at some things on the internet, and somebody had this t-shirt, created this t-shirt, and they had a cap too. It said, "Always an angry black woman, never damn she got a point." And I like that because, and I have incorporated that into my presentations because, but people are angry, but so don't these children that come into our courtrooms, they're being removed. We're talking about them, but not to them. They have a right to be angry. Parents have a right to be angry. So we have to acknowledge that and then move forward. It's how you deal with their anger, but you have to say, you have a right to be angry. So they look at us like that too, you're just this angry black woman, you're just, whatever. And so I have to say, I don't think I'm an angry black woman. Some things do make me angry though, and I have a right to be angry just like anybody else. So it's complicated, Barbara, as you know.
I think that, first of all, these systems, both systems, the delinquency and the dependency system, there is unquestionable data that black families, black children are disparately impacted by these systems. It's not up for debate. And so I think that when we are intentional about ensuring those voices are heard, ensuring that we're watching outcomes in cases to make sure that we're addressing that systemic issue, I don't think, to me, that seems like the right thing to do. So I just feel very unapologetic about it. And if we are addressing the impact, I don't think we're hurting or hindering white families and white children in any way. by addressing the impacts that affect black children and black families harder, right? Because, we know that white children are less likely to be removed. White children are more quickly reunified with parents. So that's fine. That's what should be happening for all families. And so there's no, I mean, I don't know. I just don't feel particularly apologetic about doing racial justice, racial systemic, addressing the racial impact of these systems on our family and on our community. And I don't feel, I was very clear about that when I ran and I was elected. So I feel like of the people who voted, people were receptive to that message. And so I don't feel that I should shy away from that when I'm doing the work on the bench and policy outside of court.
Okay, that's all the time we have left to ask the judges questions. I would like to say thank you for y'all coming out here and asking our questions. Okay, we have some bags for y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, y'all can say y'all last words.
Well, I'll give Judge Clark the last word. I'll just say, obviously, it's always, always, always amazing to be in community and present in the Gwen Girls family, Gwen's Girls family, with Dr. Kathy, with everyone. Lots of familiar faces in the audience, and I'm really honored to have been asked and to be here. And I would just say to all of our emerging leaders that any of you can do anything you want, including be sitting right here. And it's not really any question in my mind that all of you have the power and the potential, the intelligence, and the fortitude to do it. So good luck.
Yes. I just want to say thank you for inviting me here today. It's always a pleasure to attend this Black Girls Equity Summit and to be a part of it. I was blessed to have known Commander Gwen Elliott and worked with her when I was in the DA's office. I watched Dr. Kathy, grow up, and I know that Gwen is smiling down on us. And to the emerging young leaders, you young women were so phenomenal. I have no doubt that you can be anything and do anything you want to do. Your beauty, your grace, your poise, your intelligence just radiated throughout this. There wasn't really a dry eye in here when you were speaking and reciting and sharing your stories, which is a very brave thing to do, to talk about your personal stories in front of a group. And you shared that with us. And I feel very privileged because you did not have to do that. And so you shared with us parts of your life and how Gwen's Girls has instilled in you positive change and made you feel empowered. And that's really what it's about, empowering young Black women to move forward. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes I don't feel empowered, and I'm not a young Black woman. So I'm really excited. I'm really optimistic about the future. I see the future in all of your faces. And so I have great expectations now based upon what I've seen in her today. So thank you. And Dr. Kathy, thank you.